In today's episode, some new puzzles from companies like Yushin and Fangxi, new world records that happened in the past 2 weeks, history of the Rubik's Cube, interview with SpeedCubeShop owner Cameron Brown, and a giveaway that will have 10 winners. Hey, Shawnee from SpeedCubeReview.com for the SpeedCubeReview podcast. This is episode 2. Now, you can be listening to this on YouTube, and actually I'm going to talk about that real quick before I go into the other places you can listen to this. A lot of people in the first episode said they didn't like the bars that moved around when I was talking. Some people actually said they liked them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep them for right now, but I'm going to slow them down so they're not too crazy. But if you don't want the visual, you can always go to speedcubereview.com/podcast to listen to an audio version right on there. There's an RSS feed, so you can listen to it on your favorite podcast client, or you can just download it right on iTunes. And if you do use iTunes, please go and give it a review. That really helps the show out. There's already a couple on there, so thank you very much. Now, getting it on iTunes was kind of a bit crazy. You can't just set it up like you would for YouTube. It's not something that you just go and submit a file, put in the info, and then it's there. iTunes doesn't actually host podcasts. They feed them through there. So what you have to do is you have to create an RSS feed, make sure the XML coding is correct. It took me 3 tries to submit it just because the artwork was not the exact right size that they wanted. And actually for a full day, it said that the creator, the author of the podcast was unknown, just because I didn't even know how to plug that part in there, but it should be set now. So a couple new things also on the podcast page. Like I said, you can go to speedcubereview.com/podcast, or if you just go to speedcubereview.com, there's a podcast tab. And there's now a little thing for context, so you can send me ideas, questions you want answered, things that you want changed with the show, maybe ideas for interviews. You can just always submit them right there. I would love any ideas that you guys have. Last week's question were things that you wanted to see different or you liked about the show, and it was almost overwhelming that you guys wanted a longer podcast. So I'm going to try to add that. One thing I'm going to do is be a little more casual with this. Usually in my videos, I cut out a lot of space. You actually cut out most of my breath. So if you're watching my videos and you're wondering, does he breathe? Normally, yes, but in the videos I cut that out and actually cut it out of a lot of the podcasts. So I'm just going to keep it in, be a little more casual. I'll, cut out some things just so it flows a bit more, but, this will be just a little more relaxed, and that way you can enjoy it a bit more as well. Now, the winner of last week's giveaway for the Ivy Cube was Nina Berry. I tried the email that was provided, and it says it was invalid. So please contact me. Make sure you let me know what email you use, because like other giveaways I've done, people will try to pretend they're the person they're not. So there's a couple things I'm going to require to make sure that you're the right person. But contact me because your email did not work. So for this week's giveaway, I'm giving away some new lubrication from SpeedCubeShop. Now, I already unboxed these on the YouTube channel, and they had the name Scum, Elixir, and Rain. Now, I guess those were just code names and not the official names. The official names are now Martian, Nebula, and Galaxy. And actually, on the podcast through the interview, I did the interview, I believe, Thursday night last week, and Cameron said that for the first time people are going to hear it first here, these are the new names, and then I had to remind him that the podcast was not going to be released for another about 4 or 5 days, so they are already out. Now, I asked Cameron, and he said he was going to give away 5 of them, but then during the podcast, he changed his mind, decided to give away 10 of them. So there's going to be a question at the podcast page about something during the show. So if you listen to the show, you'll have the answer there. If you want, you can go check that out. That way you know what to listen to. But I'm randomly going to pick 10 winners, and I'm going to then send the contact names to Cameron for him to handle the rest and handle the shipping like that. So since we're talking about new lubrication, let's talk about new puzzles. I talked about last week the Yushin 17x17, and there's new photos out of stickers on it. So I don't really know how much closer this is to full production, but at least they have stickers now too, and it is looking good. One thing I'm wondering with this is if it's going to halt the production of the Moryu 15x15. That was supposed to be out about last year. They said there were some production issues, but I feel like the 15x15 was just for the sake of Moryu saying, we have the largest puzzle that's mass produced, and if the 17x17 comes out and Yushin's usually a little bit cheaper than Moryu, we'll see. I'm doubting the 15x15 is ever going to happen now. So another thing by Yushin, though, they also have a puzzle I saw some pictures of that's like the Oscar Van Devertreur's treasure chest. And what that was once you solved it, you could open the top up and put something in and close it. The inside of this looks quite a bit smaller, and it doesn't seem like it's a direct copy how the 17 by 17 was. It's, something very similar that he did, but it's not a copy of it. But it looks really cool. It's something, I'll definitely get and, put something in it just for the sake of putting something in it. And lastly, Yushin also has a picture of a 5x5. Now, it's really interesting, some of the pictures, because they're on Facebook and Instagram. And a lot of these things, check out their Facebook and Instagram. Some people ask me to put the photos in with YouTube, but there's already a lot of editing with this. And if they're not going to be on the podcast, I want the YouTube one to be pretty similar. So, but check out those places. It's really cool apart because you can see how the cylindrical shape is on the inside. It looks like it's going to be a budget cube. It looks like it's going to be a really light puzzle and about 64 millimeters. Some other new ones. Chi has something new they've been showing that's not a WCA puzzle. It's a star-shaped puzzle. They're calling the Starfish. It looks like a similar mechanism to the Dino Cube. And what that is, if you look at the way the cuts are on a Dino Cube, it's like an X where it turns in the middle. I can't tell exactly if that's what it's going to be, but it looks a lot like that. Chi also has a bag that's about to come out. It's smaller than the Moyu one, but it has more pockets. It has different sections for cubes. It also has things to hold pencils. It looks more like what you'd see in maybe a camera bag for like a DSLR camera with the different lenses, which I really like that because I felt like with the Moyu one, I was stuffing a lot of things in just to have things not move around. I actually think Drew Brads showed that in the video. He's like, I've got these other ones here just so everything doesn't move around. It's a nice bag though. So some other photos came out of a puzzle from Fangxi, and this is something that Fangxi and Shengshuo and a couple other ones, they're not really big on social media. So whenever you see a puzzle, it's pretty much already at retailers. And this one, within the last 2 weeks, you saw some pictures, and now I've seen some retailers say they're about to have it in stock or already do. So this one, it's not a WCA puzzle. It's really interesting. It looks like there's a spherical 3x3 inside of a 2x2 that's square. So if you've seen when Oscar made his sphere in a cube 17 or 13 by 13, it almost looks like that. But it seems that the outside 2x2 square is connected to the corners of the 3x3. So as you turn it, it scrambles both equally, so the corners are kind of connected. If it's not, though, you might be able to scramble the 2x2 and 3x3 separately, which makes it where you have to solve two puzzles at once, and that'll be difficult. That'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So that's about it for the new puzzles that have kind of been rumored. I want to talk about a few things on my mind with different puzzles. So one thing, I made a video on this because I see it all the time. People ask about the difference between the GAN Air Master and something else, or even the Master and the Advanced. They're the same puzzle. The Standard, Advanced, Master, and Grandmaster are the exact same puzzles. The difference in the names is different things you get with it, such as springs, or the metal tool, or different fluorescent stickers. The GTS2 came out from Moyu. Some people call it GTS2, sometimes a GTS version 2. Moyu has called it both of those on their page. So whatever someone calls it, they are correct because that's what Moyu has said. On the box it says GTS2, but they've called it GTS version 2. Some people got version 1s in the box. This is not the first time this has happened for Moyu. The same thing happened with the Yuhu. Technically that's YJ, but I believe at that time they were using the same factory. And people got the version 1 when the version 2 came out, or the Yuhu R came out. I think that's pretty much fixed, and it seemed like a really small issue, but if you ordered one, just check that. I talk about the differences in the GTS2 video. One other thing I want to talk about is the Chuwen came out, the new 2x2 from the sub-brand of Moyu. When they talked about it and the prototypes came out, some of them had magnets, and I remember them saying that this is going to be the first mass-produced puzzle with magnets. It does not have magnets in it. Somewhere along the line, they must have changed their mind, and yeah, it doesn't have magnets. It works great with magnets, and honestly, I feel like it's better. I don't like to say better, but I prefer it with magnets. So if you do get it, that would be something I would recommend. So, okay, let's go on to some records. Now, there was a couple new world records. There's a Scube average of 2.62 by Lukas Berlinga of Poland. Now, this is funny because it's the exact same time as the world record that was broken at the last podcast I talked about by Michael Rujewski also from Poland, and which Lucas then, it also beats his previous record by 1/100th of a second, 2.63. So it's all really close, but Poland seems to have a lockdown on this cube thing. There is a new world record for 4x4 average. Max Park got that just a couple days ago with a 25.53 average. He also set a new national record of 22.33 on the 4x4, which also beats his old national record by a second and a half. There's a couple other things. There's a new North American Rubik's Cube average from Lucas Edders, which was 6.89, and a new Asian world record of 6.86 by, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Sung Hung Nam. He also set a new Asian record for 4x4 average and single, so I apologize for butchering that name. Now, I missed last week, Kevin Hayes got a new national record for 7x7 at 2 minutes and 23 seconds at California. In the last podcast, I didn't say that, but it doesn't really matter because he now beat that with a new national record at Atomic Fools with 2 minutes and 22 seconds, so he just beat that by about a second. So before we move on to the history portion, I want to talk about different ways you can keep the show going with different things like Amazon and stuff like that I talked about in the first show, but I don't like talking about that because I just enjoy doing this, so I'm going to hand it over to someone else to talk about.
The SpeedCube Review podcast will always be 100% free. If you would like to contribute to the show, head over to speedcubereview.com/podcast. There's a PayPal donation button for a direct contribution, or if you ever shop on Amazon.com, please consider using the link provided on the podcast page, which can help the show greatly and will cost absolutely nothing extra from you.
Now, I want to thank Cubing on My Mind, who informed me that he used my Amazon link when he made a recent purchase, so thank you very much. Now, the last part of the show, before we get to the interview, is the history lesson. And last time I talked about VLS, Vault Glass Slot, and I was going to talk about the Alpha 5, because during the last question and answer I did, Cameron said that that was probably the most popular puzzle ever. Now, I tried looking stuff up on it, and I couldn't really find like history on or things about it. So I'm just going to do it on the Rubik's Cube, which I probably should have done in the first episode. So this is just going over the basics of how it got started. Erno Rubik, he was a professor of architecture at the Budapest College of Applied Arts in 1974. There's actually a few stories of why he built the first prototype for Rubik's Cube. One of the more common ones is that he was looking for a way to visually demonstrate the ability to create a three-dimensional object that you could also move, so creating sort of spatial relationships between pieces. One of the first ideas he did to try to make it used rubber bands to hold everything together. It wasn't until he had finished the kind of current project he has right now and added stickers that he realized that he had made a pretty difficult puzzle. It took him well over a month to solve it, and you can pretty much say that Erno Rubik was the first person to solve the Rubik's Cube. There's actually some discussion on who created the puzzle first, though. There's different patents around the world for similar things, and like a 2x2 was patented in Canada just even a couple years before that in 1972. In 1978, it won the Budapest International Trade Fair, and within that time, he had gotten it into a place that made it into a toy. Because of certain laws, though, in Hungary, that cube could only be sold there for some time, and it wasn't until the puzzle was picked up by Ideal Toys Company and was able to be sold as a actual puzzle around the world in 1980. Now, it was called the Magic Cube, but they rebranded it as Rubik's Cube for a few different reasons, mainly that it was a different name that people wouldn't really recognize for anything else other than that, and also there's some issues with copyright with the term Magic Cube. So since then, the cube has changed. It is now about half the weight that the original one sold, and almost 40 years later, they updated the model again, which is one you can find in stores right now that has caps instead of stickers. Today, there have been over 350 million cubes sold. There have been a lot of different variations, as well as even a TV show, which we'll talk about at a later time. So now it's time for the interview, so let's jump right into that. So I'm here with Cameron Brown. He created SpeedCubeShop in 2008. So thank you very much, Cameron, for joining me today.
Hey, no worries. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So first question, I'm really trying to figure this out. So you created in 2008. How old were you then?
I was 14 at that point. I remember I was in a high school freshman class. I had just gotten into high school, a computer science class, and I'd finished my projects, and I just started working on a website thinking it wouldn't really amount to much, and it ended up being the first version of SpeedCubeShop later on.
So that was going to be my next question. Like, how did you do that? So you did all the coding yourself?
Yeah. Originally, I just found like a skeleton online, and then I just kind of filled in the meat and the bones and everything. You know what I mean? So I just sort of, it was a little bit easier. It wasn't like heavy coding back then, but I've learned some now, and that's benefited me. But yeah, back then the website was horrible. Looking back, every time I see old versions of it and stuff, it just is cringy how bad and unprofessional and sketchy it looked. But yeah, at least I think we've evolved past that now.
Yeah. Well, did it like just evolve from there, or has there been any just huge overhaul of the site where it just sort of started over?
Well, yeah, that was actually like a year and a half ago exactly. My last website was like a really big jump from the one I had prior. And I had like a professional developer and everything helped me with it. And it cost me a ton of money and time. That was like the biggest revamp. And unfortunately, that website completely crashed. I don't know, even to this day, I don't know what happened to it. It just, things stopped working. And the biggest tipping point for me was when orders would be submitted and they just wouldn't show up in the order queue. It'd show as like already shipped. So you can already imagine that's a huge issue. This was years ago. So when I decided to start working full time on SpeedCubeShop again and dial back on school a bit a year and a half ago, I spent like literally close to 2 weeks working 16-hour days, I'd say, just completely doing the whole new site, transferring over the products and just redoing things and touching things up. It was a crazy almost 2 weeks for me. I like wasn't eating or sleeping at all. It was just intense, but it's paid off because I think that people appreciate the new navigation and usability of the new site.
Yeah, definitely. So is this the only job you've ever had then?
Yeah, actually. I mean, I used to do car detailing and stuff on the side, but it wasn't really a full-time job. It was just like more of a weekend thing that I turned a hobby into a small business that got relatively popular locally. But it's just, the problem is the time they would take and the reward was getting to be so little because it would be hot. And I threw in the towel when it was like 116 degrees out one summer and it was just blazing. I spent like 10 hours on the car and I was just feeling so sick afterwards. And I just was like, yeah, this is just not for me anymore. I can't even wash my own cars now because the thought of doing it is just, sickens me.
Well, I was still doing a hobby, which is good. I mean, I did, I think, Taco Bell and then other things before I got to violin.
Yeah.
So when I got into cube, I've only been cubing for about a few years now. And the big thing I remember is seeing like cam cubes and like the Zanchi cam cube. And then it like went away and now they're back. So what's the story or history of that sort of thing?
So those began, I can't remember the exact year, but I know that it happened, I believe, right before Nationals in Ohio. I want to say it was 2013. So I know someone's going to fact check me on that. So whatever that year was, it just started off as just being something that I used. So, the Zanchi was really popular back then. It was my main. And I just set it up to how I would use it. Was at the competition. Naturally, at Nationals, lots of people are going to be using your cube and stuff. And that was when I was really into YouTube as CamCuber. So I was friends with like Desi37 and people like that. Mm-hmm. So they were all using it and they were telling me, man, this is really good. Can you make mine like this? So I made their cube, set them up, and it just really caught on. And people were like, you should start selling this. So I made them official products. I did the Zanchi, the first one. Then I moved into the Guhong version 2, I believe. And I think I did a few others. And they were pretty much the pre-version of the current Cosmic Cubes today. The only reason I stopped doing them is just because I felt that the name, CamCuber Zanchi or whatever was, if I were to do like a CamCuber GTS2, for example, that name CamCuber blank is tied into old cubes like Zanchis and Guhongs. And, it's funny because the original CamCuber Zanchi is still actually really good. And this is like, it has not been touched. It's literally the original cube. I got my 7.62 PB in competition with the CamCuber Guhong version 2, and that was a non-lucky full-step solve. So I'm pretty proud of that. And it just shows that you don't have to be using the newest cubes to get good times. As long as it's set up well and you're comfortable with it, you're good to go. I know that's something that you also agree with.
Well, I was jokingly going to ask if you're still using it, so there we go.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, awesome.
What's funny is the other night I was using my Japanese speed cubing kit just for fun. It's horrible compared to today's standards. I was getting pops. That's how old it is, but I loved every second of it. A Japanese speed cubing kit. So what it is, it's an old Rubik's Cube that was a DIY kit. So it has adjustable springs and screws and everything. It's what Yu Nakajima used to get like his world record and stuff back in the day. And then later on, Eric Ackersdyke got his world record with a Rubik's.com DIY kit, which was the US version of this Japanese SpeedCubing kit with Type B cubies on it. So if you want to try it sometime, I'll mail it to you so you can check it out. But it's pretty cool because it's so vintage and it just feels so like it really trains you, which is I think why I have such an accurate turning style, because you have to be accurate with these older cubes, otherwise it's just going to pop.
Yeah, I told you I was going to do the history lesson about the Alpha 5, and I tried doing a bunch of research on it, and I really couldn't find much. I feel like a lot of that is, historically, I need to sort of look at the whole context of DIY cubes. And that was one thing, when I got into it, DIY, just, to me, I didn't understand that was this whole, actually type of puzzle that you would, adjust.
Oh, yeah. That's all we had back then. Like, that was everything. I started off, and my first real speed cube was a Type A1, which was later branded as the Alpha 1. And it was essentially, like what I was describing, the Japanese kit, it was essentially a Rubik's Cube with adjustable springs. It was like the same piece design, but it wasn't branded under Rubik's, where the Japanese SpeedCubing kit is actually from Rubik's. So it has like a Rubik's logo and everything on it, which is pretty cool.
So are we like living in the golden age right now of Rubik's Cubes?
Oh, yeah. If you had given me like a GTS2 or a Volk or a Ganair back then, like I don't even know how much faster I would have been, because we were so limited back then by the technology. I mean, I know the newer algorithms and methods have been helping a lot with that too, but the technology was so dated. Like every time I go back and use like a cube, like a Type F1 or a Cube for You DIY kit, it's just so dated. It's crazy that people were even able to get sub 10s with that. I mean, it's just so much like worse and just so far behind, but they're really fun to use.
Yeah. Kind of on this whole different cubes getting there, I get asked this a lot because people think I am a shop, but people ask me about getting sponsored. And I guess I'll kind of say, I know, at least for me, and this for everyone listening, like I don't just get random cubes just shipped to me. I know Cameron just said he's going to possibly send me something to try out, but he probably wants that back. So I'll let him kind of take over, because I get this question and somebody asked me to ask this. How do you get sponsored, or even what is that? What does that entail with SpeedCubeShop?
So sponsorships are sort of tricky because there's no cookie cutter formula to if you're going to get sponsored. Like I can't take your name, your YouTube channel, your WCA, and plug it into a formula and decide, yes, he's going to get sponsored, or no, he's not. The whole big thing that I preach, and there's a video I have on my channel about this too, is just about the value that you can provide to a company. This applies to cubing or whatever. When I was trying to get sponsored for car stuff, which is another one of my hobbies, the companies always say, what sort of value you're going to provide, because people think that getting sponsored is all about just getting free stuff. And if you go into it with the mentality of just, I want free stuff, it's generally not going to end too well for you. You need to be looking at the company as a partnership and how you're going to help them improve, and by improving and driving traffic to their site and creating more sales and helping advertise them and, talk about the company, they're going to want you to use their products and stuff to help, because when you're sponsored, you're the image of the company. Like, whenever you do videos and stuff for SpeedCubeShop, you're representing SpeedCubeShop by being a tester or, sponsored cuber. So people just need to realize that, you just have to provide value. And I hate to sound blunt, but if you have, 50 subscribers or like 10 views per video, you're not really reaching a huge audience by posting a video. So, I mean, the cost to send a cube to somebody with shipping and everything, it's just not really worth it. So to answer your question, if I had to put a number on it, we say on the website that a good starting point is if you're a YouTuber and want to get sponsored, based off of your YouTube and YouTube alone, having around 500 views on the majority of your videos. So if you had 10 videos, about 8 out of the 10, you'd want to have at least 500 views on those. Have good content, be engaging, be original. And if you're looking for WCA, like official competition sponsorships, it just really depends, because there's so many variables. But generally, if you're going off a 3x3, which is what people ask me most about, you're going to probably need to be like sub 10 at this point, or at least 10 average.
Yeah, and you have some sort of like team SpeedCubeShop, right?
Yeah, we sponsor tons of cubers all around the world and have a really solid team of just lots of great cubers and YouTubers and just great people in the community. When
people ask me about, because people ask me to send them things, and which I usually don't have stuff. If I do, I give them away. But I believe you contacted me before I contacted you about anything, if I remember correctly. It's been, I think a couple years now,
Probably, yeah. And I mean, if I remember correctly, it was just, I was on YouTube and came across your video, and I see that you were doing something that was different. You had your website going at the time, and just the way that you carried yourself in your videos was professional and engaging, and you covered all the right topics instead of just unboxing a cube and saying, go buy this. So that kind of caught my eye, and that's why, I mean, your channel was a lot smaller back then. I think you had like 2,000 subs maybe.
Yeah,
yeah, so I mean, I definitely saw the potential with you, and that's why I'm glad that we've been able to work together for this long.
Yeah, definitely. It's just been fun. So, well, let's get back to your questions. I'm going to stop self-promoting myself. So these are a couple things from Instagram that I asked. And actually, yeah, for other people, I'm usually going to post on Instagram who the next guest is going to be. So get on there and you can send some questions. From S Green Machine, this very, I think, straightforward question. What is the most rewarding or best parts of running a successful business, and what's the most difficult?
There's lots of difficulties with it. If I had to choose one for the most difficult, I'll start with that, is going to be all of the external factors that weigh down the business and cause issues, like the postal service or credit card issues or just things like that. It's mainly the postal service, to be honest. But the most rewarding part of it is just knowing that I'm helping the community that I love and support so much, and that I'm able to provide a service that's just helping people, because when I grew up, I only had stores in China to shop from, and it was a horrible experience. I ended up losing close to $200 of my hard-earned money, which for a 14-year-old, $200 is a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of money for me now, and I'm 22. So it was just pretty devastating for me to lose that and not have any customer support to help me with that. So that's just the whole thing, is I like to help people and just know that people are being taken care of and that their shopping experience is how it should be.
So do you have to then travel to China a lot? How do you, I mean, I can't even figure out sometimes how to contact, to ask a question about a thing. How do you get a hold of them?
I'm actually going in a month. Well, I'm actually going in a month. So, yeah, I'll be there very soon, visiting with all the factories and meeting with all the companies and just going over things, because it's great doing it online, but there's a difference in talking to somebody online and then talking to them in person and actually having that face-to-face interaction. It's tough because it's China and it's lots of late nights for me. Like last night, I was up until, I think, almost 2 a.m. just talking to them because of the time difference and just getting things done. So it's tough, but you just have to kind of just be persistent.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing from Instagram. So TC Cubes, sort of the same idea, but what are the... Actually, let me ask this. What difficulties did you find memorable in the beginning stages of starting a shop? So I guess when you're starting it, what was the most memorable challenge or hurdle you had to get over?
Gaining the trust of the community, for sure. Anybody can start a cubing store. I mean, it's just, you have to give people a reason to why should they shop from SpeedCubeShop over their favorite store. Why should they shop with you? Because like I said, anybody can start a store. You have to be able to provide value and gain the trust, because when people are giving you their hard-earned money and everything, they expect the product and a good service and everything. So that's just by far the hardest part, is gaining the trust. I've actually lots of other cubing stores that are starting up contact me, asking me how I've done it and how to gain the trust, which I thought was a bit funny. But yeah, that's the hardest part, is convincing people to shop with you and giving them a good reason to do so, other than just, oh, I'm the best, buy from me.
So then, with all these cubes that have come out and how everything's really changed in the past few years with all the cubing hardware, where do you see this going? This is a question from J_OE14. But where is hardware heading? Where do you see any place it's going that it's not quite there yet?
I mean, it's kind of always hard to predict, 'cause I'm not a cube designer. So back when the Vault came out, I think a lot of people, or in the GAN era, 'cause those kind of came out around the same time, people kind of thought that it couldn't get much better than that, but factories always find a way to make it better. So it's kind of hard to say, but from what I can tell, cubes seem to be going with a more simplistic yet complicated design. So the GES hardware for the GAN Air is my example of it being more complex. Mm-hmm. And the simplicity is comparing, I don't know if you've heard of the Alpha VF. That cube was extremely hollow, really complex design, and it's just flopped because by making it so complicated and the mechanism part of things, it didn't work well. It was just too many small breakable tabs, and they're trying to make it lightweight, and it made it unstable and catchy. So I think that having a more simplistic piece design and just really going after the core adjustability is what seems to be the key.
Okay, so then that's for us cubes now. Where do you, is there something that you are looking towards? I know there's one thing actually I haven't asked about, that you just have a new set of lubricants out. I tried a few on the channel, but they were, the one that I had, they were Elixir, Rain, and what was the other one? Scum. There it is. So are those names sticking? Are those going to be the official names, and are those the three of them?
Those are the three of them, but the names are not sticking. Originally, those names were just a code name and a little bit of a joke, just because it was funny to hear it being said on video. Then we had the whole issue with the Elixir typo, so that was pretty fun. But the names I think that we're going to be going with, and you're hearing it first here, is going to be Nova, and I think that we're doing Martian and then Galaxy for the purple. So Nova or Nebula will be blue. We'll be doing Galaxy for purple, and then Martian for green. Because that green is a very obscure green. That's why Scum was a joke. It looked like pond scum to me from when we did our zoology class recently. So it's just a very obscure green, and Martians are kind of obscure. So I don't know. We're just kind of keeping it tied into the whole cosmic theme of our second line of cubes. It's going to be like a cosmic line of lubes, but they're going to be all standalone lubricants that they can work great being together, but they can all support themselves.
So what's the difference between the three then?
So the three of them all have different characteristics and traits. The most obvious being the viscosity and color. The color does actually mean something. I know that people think that it's just for show, but the color is a way to differentiate. The color doesn't make it work better or worse. It's just we dyed it to make it easier to recognize and to differentiate between the three. But the viscosity is a big one, and what you use them for. So Martian or Scum is going to be something that I tend to like for bigger cubes or for people that really like that really fast feel. But pretty much all of these will make your cube fast and pretty gummy without having the issues of gunking up your cube with tons of lubricant, or just, using like a really heavy weight, which not everybody's a fan of. So it's a really easy to use solution. It's pretty long lasting. Our test cubes we used all three, and they were brand new cubes, and we put like 500 hard, just abusive solves on each of them, and we didn't really see much of a decline after 500 solves on each. So something like the Nova or Nebula is going to be for the people that like a slightly thicker, a little bit more gummy. So kind of the heavier you go, so you're getting a little bit more gummy feeling with each one. But it's just great to try them all. We tested them at a local competition, and people just loved all three of them for different reasons, and they all respond differently in different cubes too.
So I think I've just got one more question, just kind of wrap things up, because I realize already this is going longer than what the entire first podcast was. So if there's one thing that you would want to, because you have an audience of about 1 million people right now, give or take a few. So if you had one thing to just kind of tell all the cubers out there, your best word of advice, just in general for cubers, what would it be?
To practice and not get too frustrated with it, because it sounds cheesy and corny or whatever, but lots of people just need to put in the practice, because I think there's some shortcuts to getting faster, and algorithms and having the right hardware certainly helps. People just don't want to put the practice in. It takes hours of hard work and time to get to the fast times that you want, and then not giving up and being patient and knowing when to step away from it for a week or two and just take a break is also very powerful. I would find that when I was starting to hit a brick wall, step away for a week and then come back and you'll be faster. So people just need to not stress so much over it and just enjoy it. Practice a lot and just know when to step away, I think, when you hit that wall.
Awesome. And how long have you been cubing? So the store is 9 years old, but what about it?
I've been cubing since 6th grade. So, it's been a while. For sure over a decade. I don't even know exactly the year when I started. I think it was 6th grade. I don't even know. I'm going to say conservatively like 12, 13 years.
Awesome. Well, I'm working my way to that date right there. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always fun, chatting and stuff. So I was looking forward to this.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing for everyone. So we're giving away 5 sets of the lubricant. I'm going to actually have in the speedcubeview.com/podcast webpage the entry. There's be a question based on this interview. So just go there, answer the question. You'll be entered to win. One of 5 people that's going to get this entire set of the new Cosmic Lubes. Is it okay to call it Cosmic Lubes?
Yeah, let's just make it 10 people. Feeling kind of saucy. 10
people. Okay, so if 10 people, I'm going to make the question kind of hard too, so we'll see if we get 10 people answering.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So I want to thank once again Cameron for coming on, doing that interview. The giveaway for the 10 packs of lubrication for the 10 different winners will be on the website, speedcubeview.com/podcast. If you're on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. If you're on iTunes, please go and leave a review. And remember, you can always stop by the speedcubeview.com for more news and reviews. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys later.